Something is happening inside the British monarchy right now, and most people have not fully noticed it, because it is not happening the way these things usually happen. There is no coronation, there is no grand announcement from the palace balcony. There is no single dramatic moment for the cameras. Instead, there is a quiet, deliberate, and utterly remarkable transfer of power taking place in plain sight, one careful step at a time. A king in his late 70s, battling cancer, is methodically handing the machinery of the monarchy to his heir, before he is gone, before he has to be. King Charles III is securing the throne for Prince William, and the way he is doing it may be the most consequential act of his entire reign. This is not about the king suddenly dying, or dramatically abdicating overnight, whatever the wildest headlines might scream. The truth is more subtle, and in many ways more fascinating. What is unfolding is something royal commentators have started to call a shadow regency, a slow, structured handover in which William takes on more and more of the powers and duties that have belonged, for over 1,000 years, to the monarch alone. And when you line up all the pieces, the banquets, the ceremonies, the removal of rivals, and one legal change almost nobody outside royal circles is talking about, a single picture emerges. Charles is not just reigning, he is preparing. He is building his son a throne that no one will be able to shake. Before we lay out exactly how he is doing it, and why one particular change matters more than all the rest, make sure you subscribe to Palace Files, because this is the kind of slow, deliberate royal story that the daily headlines completely miss, and we follow it closely. Now, let's start with the reality that drives everything. The king's health, and the clock that is ticking behind every decision he makes. To understand why Charles is moving with such quiet urgency, you have to understand where he stands. When he came to the throne in September of 2022, following the death of his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, he made history in a way few noticed at the time. He became the oldest person ever to accede to the British throne. He had also been the longest-serving heir apparent in British history, a man who waited more than 70 years for a crown that finally arrived when he was already in his 70s. That single fact colors everything about his reign. Charles did not come to the throne as a young man with decades ahead of him. He came to it in the twilight, knowing his time to shape the monarchy would be short, and then came the health battle. Charles has been undergoing treatment for cancer, a fight that has played out across 2024 and 2025 and into 2026. The palace has maintained a carefully optimistic tone throughout, and in December of 2025, the king himself indicated that his treatment had moved into what was described as a precautionary phase, a statement widely read as cautiously hopeful. He has gradually returned to a fuller public schedule, increasing his engagements, even undertaking a successful state visit to the United States alongside Queen Camilla. On the surface, this is a monarch managing his illness and carrying on with duty, exactly as his mother did. But beneath that surface, the reality is more complex. Reports from those who have watched him closely at recent events describe a man who, at times, appears frail and tired. There have been accounts of the king seeming exhausted during long occasions. And whatever the precise state of his health, the fundamental truth cannot be avoided. Charles is a 77-year-old cancer patient, wearing the most demanding ceremonial crown on earth. He knows, better than anyone, that the monarchy cannot afford uncertainty. He watched his mother provide 70 years of unbroken stability. He knows he cannot offer the same. And so he has made a choice that reveals everything about his priorities. If he cannot give the monarchy a long reign, he can give it something else, a flawless, fully prepared successor. And that is exactly what he has been building. The clearest sign of this project is visible if you know where to look, and it appeared in dramatic fashion in the spring of 2026. In March of that year, at St. George's Hall in Windsor Castle, the monarchy held the first state banquet of the year, a glittering occasion held in honor of the President of Nigeria. State banquets are among the grandest and most symbolically loaded events in the entire royal calendar. They are, traditionally, the monarch's stage. This is where the sovereign represents the nation, hosts foreign heads of state, and embodies the continuity of the crown. And yet, on that night, according to those present, there was no question about who commanded the room. It was not the king, it was Prince William and Princess Catherine. The couple arrived looking, by every account, every inch the future king and queen. Observers described them as radiating confidence, youth, and authority, pulling off a flawless, regal performance on the kind of stage that had, for generations, belonged to the monarch. The contrast with Charles was, by some accounts, striking. And this was not a one-off. William has increasingly been the face of the monarchy's most significant functions. He has been conducting investiture ceremonies, the formal occasions where honors and knighthoods are bestowed. He has been hosting high-level receptions. He has been taking meetings on behalf of the king. These are duties that have historically fallen to the sovereign, and the sovereign alone. And now, one by one, they are becoming Williams. This is what commentators mean when they talk about a shadow regency. It is a state in which the heir performs the functions of the monarch, prepares fully for the role, and effectively operates as a king-in-waiting who is already doing much of the job, all while the actual monarch remains on the throne. One respected royal commentator has openly suggested that the monarchy may already have entered a transitional phase, and the significance of this cannot be overstated. Charles is not simply resting and delegating because he is tired. He is deliberately positioning William at the center of national life, ensuring that when the moment of transition finally comes, whenever that is, the country will already see William as the natural, familiar, tested figure of authority. He is manufacturing a seamless succession before it is needed. But the banquets and the ceremonies, as visible as they are not the most important part of this story. There is a structural change happening behind the scenes that royal insiders say is far more significant than any photograph of William at a podium, and it involves something most people have never heard of: royal warrants. Stay with me here, because this is the detail that transforms the whole picture from symbolism into hard institutional power. A royal warrant is a formal endorsement, a mark of recognition granted to companies that supply goods and services to the royal household. It allows those companies to display the royal seal, a hugely prestigious commercial and symbolic honor. And here is the crucial point. Traditionally, the power to grant royal warrants has belonged exclusively to the reigning monarch. It is one of those quiet prerogatives that marks out the sovereign from everyone else in the family. To grant a warrant is to exercise a piece of monarchical authority. Now, according to royal insiders, that is changing. Reports indicate that William and Catherine are set to become grantors of royal warrants themselves. In other words, they will gain the power to officially endorse the companies that serve the crown, a power that has, until now, been reserved for the monarch. One insider described this as a very significant step, and the reason is obvious once you grasp it. This is not ceremonial. This is not a photo opportunity. It is the transfer of a genuine piece of monarchical power to the heir, years earlier than would normally happen. As that same insider put it, it gives William and Kate real monarchical power earlier than usual, and it signals that they are being fast-tracked for the top job. Think about what that represents. A banquet is a performance. Anyone can be dressed up and placed at the head of a table. But the power to grant royal warrants is a real, functioning lever of the institution, and Charles is reportedly placing that lever in his son's hands, while he still sits on the throne himself. This is the difference between letting William rehearse for kingship and actually beginning to make him a king in all but name. It is the quiet, bureaucratic, deeply consequential machinery of succession, moving in real time. And it tells you that Charles's project is not about optics, it is about substance. He is not just showing the country its future king, he is arming that future king with the actual tools of the crown. And here is where the whole strategy comes into focus. Because securing William's throne was never only about elevating William, it was also about clearing everyone else out of the way. Which brings us back to the most dramatic royal event of the era, the fall of Andrew. Remember what Charles did to his own brother. He stripped Andrew of his princely title, of his Duke of York status, of his home at Royal Lodge, reducing him from a senior royal to simply Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. At the time, it was understood primarily as a response to scandal, but viewed through the lens of this larger project, it takes on a second meaning. Charles was not just punishing Andrew, he was cleaning the house that William will one day inherit. He was removing a source of ongoing embarrassment and instability from the family before it could poison the next reign. Every threat to the dignity of the crown that Charles neutralizes now is a threat that William will not have to face when he becomes king. The stripping of Andrew and the elevation of William are two halves of the same strategy. Remove the liabilities, empower the heir, secure the throne. You can see the same logic in the shadow that now hangs over Prince Harry's own titles, and in the reported tensions surrounding the wider family. Charles appears to be systematically simplifying the monarchy, narrowing it down, focusing all of its authority and legitimacy onto the single, unbroken line that runs through William. It is as if the king is pruning a tree, cutting away every branch that might weaken the trunk, so that the one branch that matters, the direct line of succession, can grow strong and unchallenged. This is what securing a throne actually looks like. It is not one grand gesture, it is 100 quiet decisions, all pointing in the same direction. Now, I have to address the loudest rumor swirling around all of this, because you have almost certainly heard it, and honesty demands that we deal with it directly. The rumor is that Charles is about to abdicate. Certain reports, particularly in the tabloid press, have claimed that the king may step aside in a matter of weeks, that his frailty has prompted urgent internal talks, and that a major public appearance could serve as his final grand moment before handing over the crown. These stories paint a picture of an imminent, dramatic exit, and it is easy to see why they spread. They combine a genuinely ill monarch with a visibly rising heir, and the conclusion writes itself. But here is where you need to be careful, and where a channel that respects the truth has to slow down. Those abdication claims are strongly disputed, and for good reason. Many royal experts and committed royalists have pushed back hard against them, insisting that Charles would never abdicate. Their reasoning is powerful. Charles waited more than 70 years for this throne. He is deeply shaped by the example of his mother, who saw the crown as a sacred lifelong duty, from which one does not simply retire. For a man who views kingship as a solemn obligation rather than a job, stepping down after only about 3 years would be almost unthinkable. As some have bluntly put it, he would never do that. And critically, Buckingham Palace has consistently emphasized stability and has never confirmed any abdication timeline. There has been no constitutional motion, no official announcement, nothing but speculation. So here is the honest conclusion, and it is the one that actually matters. Abdication is probably not coming. But, and this is the key insight, whether or not Charles ever formally abdicates is almost beside the point, because the transition is already happening regardless. Whether Charles reigns for 1 more year or 10, William is being steadily equipped with the powers, the profile, and the authority of a monarch right now. The Shadow Regency does not require an abdication to function. It is a way of preparing for succession while avoiding the trauma of one. Charles has found a path that lets him remain king, honor his lifelong duty, and still guarantee that when the true handover comes, by whatever means, it will be effortless. He gets to keep his crown and secure his son's future at the same time. And that brings us to the human heart of this story, the part that the constitutional details can obscure. Because a transition like this, however carefully managed, is never entirely smooth beneath the surface. There have been reports, and I want to be clear that these are unconfirmed accounts from sources rather than established facts, suggesting that the relationship between father and son carries its own quiet strain. Some briefings have claimed that Charles, feeling reinvigorated after his successful overseas trip, wanted to remind everyone that he remains firmly in charge, and that William should be patient. Other accounts have suggested William grew frustrated, believing his moment might come sooner than his father now seems willing to allow. The palace, as always, has not commented on these private dynamics, and we should treat the specifics with real caution. But even if the details are murky, the underlying tension makes perfect human sense, and it is worth understanding. Here is a father who waited an entire lifetime for his own turn, who knows exactly how it feels to stand in the wings for decades, and who may be in no hurry to rush the son who now stands where he once stood. And here is a son, fully prepared, increasingly powerful, watching his father battle illness, aware that his own reign is drawing closer, and perhaps impatient with the pace of it all. That is not a scandal. That is the oldest story in the history of monarchy. The crown does not move at the speed of ambition, and the space between a fading king and a rising heir has always been filled with a certain unavoidable friction. If anything, the fact that this transition is proceeding as smoothly as it is, despite that natural strain, is a testament to how carefully Charles has managed it. So let us step back and see the whole picture as it truly is. King Charles III, aware of his own mortality, battling cancer, holding a crown he waited a lifetime to wear, has made a profound and deliberate choice. Rather than clinging to power and leaving chaos behind him, he is using whatever time he has to build something durable. He is transferring the duties of the monarch to William piece by piece. He is placing real institutional power, like the granting of royal warrants, into his heir's hands. He is removing the liabilities, like Andrew, that could destabilize the next reign. And he is doing it all quietly, without the trauma of abdication, without a single dramatic rupture, so that the monarchy simply flows from one generation to the next like water finding its level. This is not the story of a king in decline. It is the story of a king in control, perhaps more in control of the monarchy's future than any sovereign in living memory. Charles may not reign for long, but he appears determined that when historians look back, they will say he did the one thing that mattered most. He secured the throne for his son. He handed William not just a crown, but a stable, cleaned up, fully prepared monarchy, ready to endure. And in an institution built entirely on continuity, there may be no greater final act a king could perform. The transition is underway. The future king is being made, right now, in real time, before our eyes. And whenever the moment finally arrives, William will step onto a throne that his father spent his own reign making unshakable. That is the quiet, stunning truth behind everything you are watching unfold. Not an ending, but a handover, engineered by a dying man determined to get it right. Thank you for watching. If you want to understand the real story of this monarchy, the deep currents beneath the headlines that decide the future of the crown, then hit the like button and subscribe to Palace Files. We follow every step of this transition, and there is so much more still to come. We'll see you in the next one.